A lot of people are willing to carry it with them to be willing to save a life. A lot of people are afraid of the stigma that's attached to it. And a lot of people don't want to have other people assume that maybe they themselves are using opioids. That's when you end up getting this fact that about 90% of people who own Narcan don't carry it with them. But only about 10% of people who own it carry it regularly.
Welcome to The Shield. This is the place where we talk about how substance use and mental health impact all facets of life, and at the same time uplift some truly amazing things that are happening in Birmingham and Central Alabama. As always, thank you so much to our sponsor, which is the Children's Trust Fund of Alabama. We could not do this podcast without you all. And if you're looking and you're thinking, this looks a little weird today, the setup is a little different, that is because we have our first ever virtual podcast guest, and you know I'm from St. Louis, so we had to do this with a St. Louis guest. So with me today is Matt Bitner-Glindzicz. Did I say it right?
That's perfect.
Woo! Okay. The founder and creator of nCase. Welcome.
Absolutely.
Welcome,
So
Matt.
glad to be here.
That was a mouthful. Okay, so Matt. So you're the founder and creator, you and one other person, right?
Yes, my co-founder and fiancée, Danny Wilder.
And fiancé. Okay, you're getting married very soon, so we're very excited about that. You all are the founders and creators of this awesome product that we're going to talk more about in just a minute. But before we do that, I want to take a step back and say that you and I were connected through a mutual friend, Grace, who was at WashU, Washington University in St. Louis, huge institution, kind of like UAB in Birmingham, huge emphasis on the medical school, research, studying. Like you go to WashU if you're smart and you like to study and you want to like change the world. And that's you. So we met through a mutual connection, but then sort of never made it happen. And then as it turns out, you came up with this amazing product. And I was like, oh, wait, I kind of know that guy.
Exactly. Yeah. When we first came up with this, Grace was that connection, and we knew we had an idea we thought we could maybe save lives with. But we knew we needed some sanity checks and to talk with some experts. And you were that one degree of connection away of expert that we hadn't met, but we knew you were probably the right person to talk to. So had tried making that happen, but it just didn't really at the time. So yeah, like you said, we continued down the path, and here we are a few years later, kind of circling back and working together after all.
So you and your fiance, Danielle, you just had nothing else to do. And so you're like, hey, let's come up with this life-saving product, right? Is that how it went?
A little bit different than that. Maybe a little bit heavier and more involved.
Yeah.
So backing up. So Danny and I had met, like you said, we were WashU students. We had came to St. Louis back in 2017. We met soon after, started dating soon after that. And so, yeah, like I said, that was 2017. Okay. About 2 years after that, in 2019, Danny goes through the tragic experience of losing one of her childhood best friends to an opioid overdose. His name is Ian. He was just 20 years old at the time. He was a student at Arizona State. And he and those he was with all owned Narcan, the nasal spray that could have saved his life.
Wow.
But unfortunately, like so many others, Ian and those he was with did not have it on hand at the time that he needed it in order to save his life. And so all they could do was call paramedics. And unfortunately, Ian ended up losing his life.
Because they might have had it in a cupboard or in their bag. I mean, I have mine in my bag, but I don't always have my bag on me, right? And so they had it, but not on their person.
They were using it and somewhere wasn't one of their homes. And so everyone had left it at home that day. And so that was something that we had heard about, obviously affected her and us very heavily.
Right.
And was something that sat with us. But as we kind of say, we weren't really looking at the problem head on. This was just something that really had kind of stuck with us until you fast forward about 5 years later. We had both graduated from WashU. I was working for a startup here in St. Louis that built optical sensors for extreme environments. So space tech, NASA tech was my life for years and years. Danny started med school also at WashU, and her classmates one day were given training on opioid overdose reversal. They were given doses of Narcan, training how to administer it, how to identify the signs of an overdose, and all of these things. Literally 24 hours after that, a group of her classmates were walking home from a bar here in St. Louis, and they come across somebody who they identify as likely overdosing on opioids.
Get
But
out.
none of them have that Narcan on hand that they had literally just been given 24 hours earlier. And so all they can do is call paramedics and wait. And sure enough, by the time paramedics arrive, that stranger was unresponsive.
Because
And
so let's press pause here. So some people
back,
might be like, "Well, why didn't they have it?" Well, first of all, a lot of places you go to now, you're not supposed to bring like big clunky purses, right? You don't want to bring a big clunky purse, especially if you're going out. Like you don't want to be lugging that around. Um, Dudes don't carry bags typically, so they wouldn't have it necessarily on their person. And I know that like when we give out Narcan either at Prevent Ed in St. Louis or now at APC in Birmingham, like we're giving out 2 doses. We have the instructions, we give it in a bag, and it's bulky. I mean,
yep,
I mean, and that's such like a lame thing to say, but it's bulky. And when you're trying to figure out what to bring on a night out or when you're going to a concert or something like that, you've got keys, credit card, license, maybe lipstick, maybe like hand sanitizer, but like there's only so much room in like a small amount, right? And Narcan wasn't making, I mean, it sounds silly, but like it wasn't being included in bags, right? I mean, it just wasn't. It wasn't making the cut.
exactly. It's like you said, bulk is one of the number one reasons why people don't carry it. The packaging it comes in, it's just not made to, like you said, fit in a pocket or fit in something that isn't like a larger bag that you're carrying. It's also just generally inconvenient. There's just not like a particularly great way of carrying that pack that you have. Even if you say have the space in your pocket, it's not like a wallet or something or
Right.
a pair of keys that you're already going to have on you. It has to be something else that you actively choose to carry with you. And that barrier is often one that's too high for most people to overcome.
Yep.
Also, it's not it's a little indiscreet because whereas a lot of people are willing to carry it with them to be willing to save a life, a lot of people are afraid of the stigma that's
That's right.
attached to it. And a lot of people don't want to have other people assume that maybe they themselves are using opioids. And
Yeah,
so a
like
lot of
why
people
would
will
you
also
have to carry this? Like, are you using drugs? And it's like, come on. Yeah.
exactly. And so when you kind of take all of those factors into account, that's when you end up getting this fact that about 90% of people who own Narcan don't carry it with them. But only about
Wow.
10% of people who own it carry it regularly. And the
Wow.
vast majority of those people are people who use, or the people who are absolutely the closest to them, loved ones, roommates, closest friends, things like that. And so
Absolutely.
there's basically what we realized after Danny's classmates went through this experience, and we also thought back to her friend Ian who had lost his life, and we realized in looking this up and realizing this 90% figure of people who don't carry it, that there's this massive gap that if we could help bridge that at all, if we could get more than 10% of people carrying it with them, how many lives could we save by having Narcan in more places where it needs to be when it actually needs to be there? And that was the question that Danny posed to me when she had heard her friend's story. The irony was I had literally just gotten laid off from my job at that startup here in St. Louis earlier that very week. And so here I was burnt out, unsure what I was going to do with my future, when all of a sudden my fiance comes up with this idea and we're looking at each other and saying, wait a second, there might actually be something to this, and there might be something that we could do to maybe potentially save lives.
And here we are. I'm going
And
to look
here we
into
are.
the camera and
Exactly.
show everybody like Vanna White. So,
Yes.
so I'm so curious because I've talked to a couple of other folks who just so happened to go to WashU or SLU, also another St. Louis University, another university in St. Louis, about ideas around greater naloxone distribution and like how can we actually intervene, right? And so there's a lot of, I would have guessed, prototypes, a lot of testing, a lot of like focus groups. So talk to me a little bit about how you all wound up with this product. Like do your thing and tell me, how did we get here?
Absolutely. So first step was we knew we needed to solve the convenience gap.
Okay.
That was the number one thing, is that it needs to actually fit into people's lives. So idea one was sticking it on a keychain. That was idea number one, was the most important, was we just need to be able to give people the ability to attach this to something else they're already going to carry with them.
That's right.
And make it easy. So that was step one. Step two was we need to make it less bulky than the packaging it comes in. And so this is where the real innovation came into mind, was because whereas most other people take that, the blister pack is what we call it, is the little foil packaging that Narcan actually comes in. Anybody else who had ever tried to solve this problem before was trying to take that blister pack and put it into something else to carry with them.
That's right.
But that only actually makes it bulkier. And more inconvenient. And so none of the solutions that people were making, maybe they were perfect for a very specific use case, like police officers with their utility belt or something like that. But nobody else had really come up with a solution that was actually making it smaller than the packaging it already came in. So really the big question we asked was, okay, can we take it out of that blister pack?
Right.
Can we do it in a way that doesn't affect the medication or the usefulness of it itself? And so
I'm going to stop you right here, because when we did, so spoiler alert, APC has bought several of these in both black and purple, and we have begun to distribute them. We have some really specific groups that we are targeting with the distribution of these. But as we were assembling them, we had volunteers come in, and they were volunteers, I would say, lots of different age, lots of different age variants, genders, races. And the number one question as people were assembling was like, can we take it out? And it's like, we can. You obviously have to be careful, right? So when you're stuffing, it did take us a little longer, quite honestly, when we were assembling these than when we were assembling our regular Narcan kits that we give to unhoused folks or distribute when we're doing a training. It did take a little longer because we wanted to be cautious, right? And because you're unwrapping the package, but you can absolutely take this out. That's pretty basic and also genius at the same time.
Exactly.
It's awesome.
So really I appreciate that. Yeah. When we started looking into it, what we realized is that the medication itself is technically self-contained in a separate housing within the nasal spray itself.
Correct.
So basically there is no risk of a short-term environmental exposure just to air or sunlight or anything like that.
This isn't hurting anything.
No, no, absolutely not. Now, it could be hurt if you, say, dunked it in water or exposed it to UV light for way too long, or too high or way too low of temperatures, or you crushed it or something like that. So that would be a risk. But if you have a case, which we'll continue to go into the engineering designs, but if you make it more temperature resistant, more crush resistant, opaque, so there's no UV risk, totally airtight and waterproof, then all of a sudden, there's no risk in that short term where you're transferring it, and then there's no risk in the long term of holding it in there either.
And just to clarify, when we're talking about risk, just for folks at home, there is no risk to Narcan other than using it. In other words, when we're talking about the risk to the product, we're talking about deploying it before we actually want it deployed, because it's a single pump. So if I were to accidentally, mess with this and deploy it, the only thing that would happen is that I've wasted a dose of Narcan. In other words, I'm not going to get sick. Ronnie, our producer's not going to get sick. Nothing's going to happen other than I've wasted this. And that's what we didn't want to happen.
100%.
Right.
And obviously, we also don't want people wasting doses, because Narcan is a bit expensive on its own. And also, and this is where it was so important for us when we started evaluating this, was we recognized that someone might carry this around with them all day, every day, never open it up, ever think about it. What we needed to make sure was that when somebody ends up in a position where they actually need to use it on somebody, and somebody's life literally depends on the usefulness of this one dose, that this dose is as protected as possible. That you're not opening this up and realizing that, it's fallen apart, or it's not working, or it's stuck, or whatever that might be, because we need to make sure that from not only a liability perspective, but also just a public health perspective, this is what matters most. And so when we go back to those engineering decisions, first it was stick it on a keychain. Second, it was make it less bulky. Third, it was make it less stigmatized by making it a generic geometric shape, a different color, more opaque, not transparent, all of these things. All right, great. Now, all of a sudden, we've overcome all of our biggest barriers to carriage that cause people from leaving at home. Now, at this point, it's about making sure that it's as useful as possible and that as many people can carry it as possible and that they want to. And so that's where some of these secondary decisions really came into mind. One was in making it a soft rubber piece instead of like a hard shell plastic. I actually might have been able to make it a little bit smaller, a little bit lighter if I went that hard shell route. But something that was important to me, going back to saying that we needed to make sure the dose was as ready as possible whenever it's needed. So one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that when you have Narcan, the plunger that you push in to administer it, this is actually a loose piece that you can pretty easily pull out the other direction. You can also shake it around. You can feel that it's a separate piece. If you had a hard shell case, problem is if you had this contained in there and you were to say drop that case from say like chest height 5 feet above the ground, that's going to be a hard impact, and you're actually more likely than not going to end up knocking that plunger out of the nasal spray. And so a lot of people, you risk carrying it around, and then all of a sudden you go to open it up, and all of a sudden you open your case and oh my God, the plunger's fallen out. And here you are not able to use that dose on somebody who maybe needs it. So that was a very serious consideration for us, was the ability to actually protect the nasal spray itself inside. You can also see in the case, see if we can maybe see in the light, that you've got this separate piece down here that also
that whole, that holds that plunger piece.
Also make sure that if you drop it from higher up, that you're also not going to end up knocking it out when you don't need to. So it's another piece that kind of contains that a little bit more and protects it even further. Another part of this was by going with this soft rubber design, it allowed us to create this flexible hinged single body design, which if you're thinking about it, so imagine I'm trying to revive somebody who needs Narcan. I'm going, and let's say if I had instead designed this as a hard plastic case that was 2 pieces instead of 1, say a cap that you had to take off in order to reveal it. I'm going to revive somebody. My adrenaline is pumping. My heart is pounding in my chest. My hands are shaking. Here I am. I've now taken the second piece off, and I need to think about what to do with this. Do I throw it to the side? Do I stick it in my pocket? What do I do? That might sound like a really easy thing to do, but when your adrenaline is pumping like that and someone's not breathing and every second counts, that's an extra bit of thought that you have to put in, an extra second of delay. But instead, by having this be a single body design, all you have to do is just open it up and you can immediately take it out and administer. And it's as fast as possible and as low lift as possible. So that was something else that was really important to me. 2 other things that I think are also worth talking about here is, one, like you said, one of the only risks that can happen when taking this out of its blister pack is accidentally administering it by plunging that plunger before you're supposed to. Because like you said, Narcan, it's only a single use. So once you do that, you can't do it again. So one thing that was important for us was to say, instead of a design for this case where you're taking it out from the bottom and you're having to say, push your finger in a certain direction out, by taking it out from the front, there's literally 0 risk whatsoever of accidentally plunging that plunger.
I didn't notice that until this exact moment.
Exactly. That's amazing. Right? It's a subtle design piece, but there's no possible way you could mess that up while you're taking it out. And then the last bit that's also important is the QR code that we have on the back. So normally Narcan and the blister pack that it comes in comes with instructions that list how to use it. But because you're taking it out of its blister pack, you no longer have those. So the QR code, it links to our website, which has a page with the instructions. It takes you right there on how to administer it. We don't want people to have to rely on either having access to a phone or having access to the internet when they need to do this. But it was important for us that we keep those administration instructions accessible to people, at least in their day-to-day life, so that they can continue to have access to those instructions when they might need them. And so you take all of this into account, and here we are with not only a solution that overcomes all of those primary barriers, but is more protective of the nasal spray, is more prone to, or is easier to use when you need it, that is more inclined to make sure you don't make a mistake with it when you're trying to use it, while maintaining all the other aspects that you need to make something full service. And here we are with what we've called Naloxone, the naloxone keychain case.
So is it Naloxone? Is it nCase? Is it what do we call it when people are saying, I want this? What are they asking for?
So we normally tell people they can just call it nCase is normally what we've defaulted to, because we want you to know that you have this just in case you need it.
Yes.
Yeah. We did, because so also an educational piece. Well, I'm sure a lot of your listeners are aware. We've been saying Narcan this entire time because that is the most common of the nasal sprays that are out there. But Narcan is the generic name for it is naloxone. That would be the chemical name. And that comes in a variety of different generic forms beyond just Narcan, all of which exist in the exact same geometry. So all of which
Yes.
fit our case perfectly. So if you have any form of naloxone that isn't just Narcan, it also will fit our case perfectly. And so in line with that, with the name naloxone, we did come up with a name for the V1 of this product, which we called Nalox 1, Nalox-1, a little play on words there. But what we found is most people just end up calling it their nCase anyway. So I think we're moving back to just kind of calling it that to begin with.
I'm so glad you mentioned about the generics because when we got these in, we had a brief moment of panic where we were like, oh, because the state who we get our naloxone from has switched by and large to the generic because it's cheaper. It works the exact same. It is just cheaper. So we had a moment of panic where we were like, oh, I hope these fit. And they did. So thank you for that.
Yep.
When it was first shown to me, so John Gall, who is really big in the mental health and substance use space in St. Louis, but also nationally, particularly with construction, how the construction industry intersects with substance use and mental health. He was down here for a conference and he brought one for me. And what he loved was its virtual indestructibleness. And, he is a guy who famously was on Southwest Airlines and there was a person overdosing. The plane did not have Narcan. He and his wife had just gone through a training, had Narcan on them, administered Narcan, and was able to keep that man alive. And so and now since Southwest and lots of other airlines are actually putting these in their first aid kits, which should have been happening all along, but I digress. So for him, construction guy and a guy that literally pulled it out of his pocket on an airplane and saved a life. He loves the keychain and he loves that it's indestructible. He's like, you could run over this with a truck. And I'm like, I don't think you're supposed to do that. And he's like, but you could, right? And I feel like that was one of the first things I asked you. So I heard you could run over this with a truck. We're not recommending that, but
we don't recommend it. I don't recommend anybody do that. Real world environment can't promise anything, but I will say when I was creating this and was engineering it, my standard for myself was, could I run over this with my car and could it protect the Narcan inside? And sure enough, once I had a version where I was able to do that, I ran over it with my car, both at 5 miles per hour and 30 miles per hour. And both times the Narcan was protected. And so I said, okay, sure enough, we've got something here that I can guarantee is as protective as possible. Granted, I don't know why I picked that as the use case because nobody's driving over this with their car, but
they could.
But they could. And that's what matters.
And it's also waterproof, which
yeah.
when I've been talking to folks, particularly like people who go to festivals, concert goers, things like that, that's been hikers like who might run across like unhoused folks or, something you never know. So as I've been talking about it, one of my like selling points has been the fact that it's waterproof.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome. So
yeah, that was something that was really important for us as we were developing.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I like that. So they come in purple, black, and red, right?
So right now.
Yes, right now.
We had launched originally with the purple. You see the purple hoodie that
because
I have.
That's the recovery color, right?
It was the favorite color of Danny's childhood friend who had passed away.
Oh, so
his favorite color. So we did that in his honor to launch as our first one.
Oh my gosh, I assumed it was because purple is the color of recovery, but no,
it was a coincidence that we realized after the fact. But we launched with Ian. Purple first was our first choice, and then since because we know that not everybody loves purple and people want different options to fit in their lives, we do offer a black that's a little more discreet. We offer a red cross red for people who are a little bit more okay with I carry the red around with me because I want people seeing it and asking questions with it. But those are 3 right now that we do have available.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the data piece?
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
again, I don't know if people know anything about WashU, but WashU folks are pretty smart. And you, I'm not trying to stereotype, but I'm going to. There's a type of student that goes to WashU, and this is a type of student that really cares about numbers and
We're data nerds
you're
mostly.
okay.
We're
Yeah,
mostly data.
yeah. Y'all
That's
are
okay
y'all
to
are
say.
some
Yeah, yeah,
nerds,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
okay.
I don't
It's
know. I
okay.
don't know a single WashU student who will watch this and be offended by
Yeah,
that.
okay,
So,
okay. I didn't
yeah.
okay. Yes. Yes. Y'all are nerds that quite literally though are going to like save the world. Like it's pretty amazing. So
And that's
talk to me about the data piece.
exactly. So, right when Dan and I had created this, and we'd gone through all of these engineering decisions, and we had eventually landed on the product that we have now. We both knew because, like you said, we're data minded people. You know, she's the future doctor. I'm the
Yeah.
engineer. We were never going to release something out into the world unless we had tested it to some degree first and we understood the impact that it could make.
Right.
And so that was exactly what we set out to do. So 2 summers ago now, we with the product that we had, we gave out 120 units of them across St. Louis to just about everybody that we possibly could to get a diverse sample pool.
For
So
sure.
that involved everyone from opioid users themselves, people who work in addiction recovery, people who work in prevention and harm reduction, EMTs, doctors, toxicologists, and then everyday lay people, bartenders, teachers, kind of as everybody we possibly could to get us a full sample set from those who live this every day to people who have the training and the know-how to the people who maybe even have no experience with this whatsoever, and wanted to give them a case, gave them a dose of Narcan if they didn't already own it, and then survey them on the front and the back end after they would carry it with them for multiple months. And the data we ended up seeing from that was absolutely incredible and blew Danny and I away in ways that we never could have even imagined. So basically, of those who had previously owned Narcan in our sample set, so those we didn't need to give it to because they already had it, only about 18% were carrying it often or always before our study, which is a little bit higher than that 10% national number that I gave you earlier, which was not surprising because, like I said, there were a lot of opioid users and doctors, EMTs in this sample set, but 18% were carrying it regularly before we started this. After a few months, 79% of that cohort were reporting carrying it often or always with our case, which is insane. That's over 4 times as many people. But what was also really encouraging was that of the people who had not previously owned Narcan, so of course 0% of them were carrying it regularly before, 65% were reporting carrying it regularly with our case after a couple months. So not only
Whoa.
could we change people's existing behaviors, but we could create new behaviors for people as well and get a substantial number of people carrying it with them. We also saw that about 87% of people overall said that they were more comfortable and confident in responding to an overdose. So even those who were not even carrying it all the time still said that they felt more confident in knowing what to do if they were in that position. But then what was really most incredible was that 10% of our users, so 12 people total, reported using it to save at least one life.
Wow.
4 of whom had never previously owned Narcan before. So
Whoa.
they wouldn't have had it on hand had we not been doing what we were doing. And as the engineer who had just recently gotten laid off at the time and did not know what he wanted to do with his future and was all over the place and burnt out and all these things, let me tell you that when we saw that data and we looked at these post-survey results, seeing those 4 was the greatest moment of my entire life. That was, I don't think anything will ever surpass that feeling of knowing the impact that something I created and something I was doing had. And that's something that moment has been the fuel for everything we've done since then and why we keep doing what we're doing.
I mean, Danny wanted to be a doctor, so she kind of wanted to help people.
She's going into emergency.
Right. Okay. So she wanted to help people. Okay.
Yeah.
But you were going to be an engineer doing like space stuff. Not saying that doesn't help people. That's a totally different kind of thing. But like how has this been? It's almost like changing like your constitution. Do you know what I mean?
Completely.
Like I you don't strike me as somebody who was just entering engineering for money, but also like you were innovating in a totally different way. And this seems to me like to see your face light up when you talk about those 4 people and knowing that this started because of tragedy, but now it's like prevention. You know, how has this changed you fundamentally? I feel like it has to have.
It's really interesting. I'm really glad you asked because I used to think I worked with a lot of purpose before. Like that was when I had that old job, which I was working at that startup for 4.5 years before I got laid off. I woke up every morning with what I felt like was a deep sense of internal purpose. Not only because, I mean, granted, I thought what we were working on was really cool. Like what
Totally.
I got to do every day was like a really cool thing to be working on, but also felt like, oh, this idea of looking for signs of life outside our planet is like one of the highest callings I could
Totally.
try to achieve. And that was something that gave me a lot of passion, a lot of drive. But the moment we got that data and I saw what real impact could actually be, it completely changed, I think, my brain chemistry at that point to understand what is passion and what is purpose and what is it that I can
Mm,
actually like devote my life to on a day-to-day basis. And you're right, it has completely shifted because I think now to do anything short of being completely mission driven wouldn't be enough to get me out of bed in the morning, at least in a way that I don't feel like I'm contributing to something greater than myself and something outside of myself and something that can actually impact people.
right.
And I think like that's the difference between working on something that's a dream, a lofty goal of, oh, I might develop technology that a decade down the line, NASA will choose to put on a device that it might end up making its way to Mars safely, and then it might end up finding something on Mars that we hadn't in the previous 30 years. However you want to look at that, sure, here's all these things that it might be a lofty dream we're working towards, but it's so far off in the distance and so many things can go wrong. And honestly, it may never actually end up leading to anything. But I can work up every single day doing what I'm doing right now and give these cases to people and know that they're turning
Day.
around and making a difference in public health and not only potentially saving lives with it, but when we think about the ripple effects that one life saved to the opioid epidemic has to so many others, when you think about their immediate loved ones and the lives
Yeah.
that they
Oh
touch,
my
and then
gosh.
their immediate loved ones and the lives that they touch, and the number of people that end up impacted by just one life saved, and my ability to wake up every single day and know that I'm doing something that contributes to that, it changes everything. And how can you possibly go back to a mindset that disregards that after the fact? So
Mm,
whenever we're done here, I don't know how long we've got of me trying to get more people carrying Narcan with them. Might be a year, might be a decade, might be the rest of my life for all I know. But one way or another, whenever this is over, whenever it's time for whatever comes next, the perspective of what I'd be willing to work on next
yeah.
will be completely different.
Yeah, I feel like it totally would change the scope of what what technology, what engineering question or problem you want to solve next because of what
Yep.
you did here in a relatively short amount of time, right? Like
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean I watch enough Shark Tank to know that these things like take time and this product development took time, but it's pretty much taken off, right?
Yeah. We
Especially in
went from
Alabama.
exactly from the time we had the idea to the time that we launched it and started selling it. Within that time, considering we had no money going into it, and we also did a full public health test over multiple months in order to test it while doing it. It took us 11 months from
That
ideation to
is
market.
wild. Like
It
Mark
was pretty
Cuban, if you're
crazy.
listening, like you need to invest in these folks because that is 11 months. I mean, that's a
11 months.
combination of like determination, passion, purpose, and drive, just like pure drive, and people wanting to support you, right? Wanting to be part of your test, like wanting to like I feel like you're like the product that could, because when I talk to people and I tell them, they're like, no way. How do I get one? I want one. And they're wanting to buy it. They don't just want it for free. They want to buy it and they want to carry it because they know that this is a game changer. So I hope you feel the amount of support and like the fact that people are pulling for you, not you because you can make a gajillion dollars, but you and your product because you're saving lives today.
Yep.
Today.
The amount of the outpouring of support we've gotten, I mean, not just in St. Louis. St. Louis is proud of the fact that we're building this
Oh
here, and the
yeah. Oh
support we've
yeah.
gotten locally has been incredible. But the buy-in we've gotten from people all over the country,
That's
I mean, it
awesome.
really has been amazing. Because like I said, we've been building this since we had no money when we started this. We've been working multiple jobs on the side to keep the lights on pretty much the entire time we've been building this up until very recently. And Danny's also still in med school.
Right.
It's not a lot of time to build a company while you're actively in med
And
school.
y'all are planning a wedding. Like, come on, that's a lot.
Planning
That's
a
lot,
wedding, and
right.
yeah, there's nothing going on in our lives
Nothing,
right now.
nothing.
But when you consider what it takes to get something like this with so few resources off the ground and do that successfully, it takes buy-in from people like you, people who are willing to spread the word and go to bat to champion it and say that this is something that needs to be promoted and needs to be brought into the world. And so to your point, we never get this off the ground without that outpouring of support and belief that we've had from so many other people. It's part of what's made this so amazing to work on.
So I know that is this version 1? Is this like prototype 1.1?
This would be like I would call this is version 1. This is the version that we've said part of how we got there in 11 months and got there so fast was our line since we started this has been, don't let great get in the way of good.
Yes.
Yes. Sometimes when you've got an idea that you know for a fact can save lives and you know that it will work for most people, great. That's when we said it's time to get this out into the world.
Yes.
When we saw that public health data we got back, we said maybe we can make other iterations of this. But also we barely have any money and we just need to start saving lives.
We need to go now and we can perfect it. Yeah.
Things can change over time. And so that's exactly what we've done. So we've been selling V1 of the product for the last 14 months now.
Awesome.
And have had so many people that have been so happy with it and have had so much buy-in for it. But we do recognize that there's ways to improve upon this, ways to make it a little bit sleeker, a little bit lighter, a little bit smaller, be able to fit into even more people's lives. Cool. And so we are actively working on the V2 of the product, which hopefully should be ready to announce here fairly soon. Not quite ready to yet, but hopefully soon that we'll be ready to launch that into the world and can get even more people saving or carrying this and saving even more lives.
Well, speaking of launching, so this podcast episode is kind of like our official at Addiction Prevention Coalition, our official launch of the fact that we have these. We have them in black and purple. And they're available on our website, and we will actually ship them to you if you live within Central Alabama and that makes sense, or you can pick them up. But also, we are going into community where we think there is a need and a desire to carry these, and that's primarily at music festivals, live music venues, concerts, specifically certain genres of music where we know that there is a awareness of what Narcan is, B, a desire to carry it, C, a reason to carry it, right? Like maybe there are some people using drugs at the concerts. Maybe there is just a greater awareness of, hey, I lost somebody to overdose and I want to prevent that. For us at APC, this is not the thing that we're giving out at health fairs. This is not the thing that we are giving when we explain what Narcan is. That's our sort of our take on these. That doesn't mean that that's not what it is, but this is how we are choosing to distribute these are to people that know what Narcan is, want it on their person because they know that they're in places and spaces where they want to have it on their person. We're also going after dudes too, because, it's easy to clip it on a backpack or kind of slip it in your pocket or whatever. But then again, I mean, this could be like a soccer mom who puts it on her like diaper bag. Like it could be whatever with a finite amount for us. The target we're going after would be college students, younger folks, I would say generally, and then people who are frequenting live music for now. But like you said, we're building the plane as we're flying it. So for now, that's where we're targeting. But who knows what's going to happen in a couple of months if these take off like hotcakes. And they very well might.
No, and I think it's a great strategy. I mean, it's something that we've also evaluated ourselves, in that it's those demographics are the people that where so many people are willing to carry Narcan with them, and we should be and we absolutely are working to get everybody carrying Narcan with
Yes.
them. It is young people, it's people my age, and it's people, especially people my age, who are frequenting those spaces where they know that it's most likely that they might be able to come across somebody who, say, takes one drug and has that laced with fentanyl and then ends up accidentally overdosing.
That's right.
Music festivals, where we know a lot of people are choosing to take recreational drugs, is absolutely one of those spaces. College campuses, another place where we know that people actively choose to experiment with drugs and alcohol. That it's absolutely a place where it makes sense of, hey, this is a high impact place, and ideally you never need something like this, but those
Right.
are exactly the type of people that you want to be convincing that, you know, you very well might, and you don't want to be stuck in that position where you can't.
Mhm.
So I think
Mhm.
it's an actually perfect distribution strategy for it.
Whew, okay, awesome. Matt, I know you've been doing a lot of these podcasts, a lot of interviews and things like that, especially as people are really paying attention to what you're doing. What is the thing that people are asking you that you wish they wouldn't ask you? Like, what's the question you're getting that's like, ugh, again with this question?
I don't really know if I have any questions that are quite like that. At least not in like podcast settings.
Okay.
The thing that keeps me up at night more than anything else is the people who I talk with every day about this. Just the everyday lay people who, you know, they hear about what we're doing. They listen to a podcast like this, or I talk with them one on one in person, wherever it is that however they might hear about us, but that they become familiar with us, that they hear the story, they familiarize themselves with why this is important, why they should maybe be carrying it with them, but then they choose not to. And then they end up coming back
Right.
to us later with
Ugh,
a story of,
I
hey, I've now
wish
bought
I
your product because I ended up in this situation I never thought I would, where someone was overdosing on the side of the road or in the bar I was in, and I wasn't able to do anything about it. And I never thought I was going to be in that position, but there I was. And so now I'm recognizing the importance of it. And it's those people that I know have heard the story before and then choose not to, that are what keeps me up at night. Because the
Mm,
question for myself is, how can we change our messaging? How can we do more to get out there, to get this in front of those people, and not only get it in front of them, but convince them on the front end that this is something that they should be carrying with them? Because you never know when other people are going to end up in that situation. And this is really the difference of how we save lives, is how do we close that gap between getting people to understand it and getting people to actually choose that action. Maybe it doesn't answer your original question,
oh,
but that's the
it's
thing.
even better. And you're like the nicest tech bro I've ever met. Like
I appreciate it.
this is like your calling, you know? And again, maybe it's not this forever, but this space, you know, how do you get people to bridge the gap between knowledge and action? Between, oh, that'll never happen to me, to it happened to me and I wish I had it. This, I think,
Yep.
is what you were uniquely positioned to do. And that's what this product is helping to do. But that's what you and Danny, that's the gap that you all are filling. And so I'm just so appreciative of what you all have done.
I appreciate that. I think the goal, even after this, or even as an extension of this, whatever it is that, you know, we're going to be looking for the rest of our lives, I think, for what are the simplest solutions that can make the biggest impact? Is this ultimately, this is not that complicated of a solution. This was just a very simple thing that we
Yes.
happen to come up with at the right time and happen to have the right skills in order to execute on. And, you know, I think I'm going to be spending the rest of my life kind of asking those same questions, and then also asking, how can I take those simple solutions and how can I bring it to the places and the people that are most in need of it, and people that
Yes.
are most willing to adopt it. I think that's part of what's been really exciting for me of working with you and working with other people in the state of Alabama, is that this has actually been pretty incredible for me, the buy-in that we've been able to get from y'all. I'll be honest, in my own bias, even as someone who grew up in Texas and grew up in the South, when we first started this, I really truly believed that it was going to be, you know, our Western states, our Californias, our Washingtons, our Oregons, or even the Massachusetts and New Yorks, the
Yep.
world, the ones have invested very heavily in harm reduction for a long time and have a lot of social services. I assumed those were the states that were going to be our primary customers early on as we tried to get the word out there. But what I've ended up seeing from states like Alabama and even here in Missouri and a few others is that it's actually some of these states that maybe have been the most starved for some of this need and some of this innovation for so long,
Yes.
that are buying the easiest and are the ones saying, oh my God, this is exactly what we need. Here's a simple solution that can actually help us cut through these problems that we're facing. And I think that's the type of thing that's really inspiring for me, is to be able to kind of reach those places and reach those people who are just as down for that innovation as we are in public health. And so going to continue to try to keep, working with people like you and working in similar spaces as best we can.
I'm not often speechless, as listeners or viewers will say, and they'll tell you, I'm not often speechless, but the first time I was handed this, I'm like, this is the thing. This is the thing that we've been waiting for, that I don't know, it bridges a gap. And I'm just really, really grateful for the work that you and Danny are doing. I'm grateful for everyone who has taken a chance on the product, who has invested. I know you've gotten some really cool, like you've won some contests and things like that for this strategy. And I'm just, on behalf of everyone who has actually saved somebody's life using this, I would just like to say thank you. So
Absolutely. And it's people like you who keep us going. So this is what it's all about.
Well, congratulations on the upcoming wedding.
Thank you.
And seriously, thank you so much for being our first ever virtual guest. I
Absolutely.
wouldn't have had it any other way. I love that, you're living in my hometown, but I also just love that, like, you have found a need and a gap and you're filling the gap. And that is what APC does. And I think that is what a lot of these organizations that are in this fight do, is we're just looking around saying, where's the need? How can we fill the need? Like today, not tomorrow, but today. Thank you. Thank you so much. Congratulations on the wedding, and come back anytime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on.
All right. If you liked what you heard, and I know you did, please consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing to The Shield. Also, if you are interested in an nCase, go to apcbham.org, and there is a link that talks all about overdose prevention, and you can select this and we will send it to you, or you can come pick it up. Thank you.